Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Cricket Talk, and we have Gaurav Kalra, sports editor of CNN IBN, talking to Rahul Dravid and Michael Vaughan. Well, welcome all. I don't think I have to spend too much time in introducing the two panelists today. Michael Vaughan on my right, one of perhaps the most attractive batsmen in the world, but he'll possibly be famously remembered for that 2005 Ashes win. What is this, 18 years since you'd beaten Australia? And
that's right, 18 years, yeah.
Yes, captain of that team. So Michael Vaughan is here. And Rahul Dravid, I don't think I need to spend more than 10 seconds introducing him, but I will in any case. More than 10,000 runs in both forms of the game, and truly a legend of the modern times, and if I may say so, a hero of mine as well. Rahul Dravid, very lucky to have you here. And of course, both these gentlemen, former captains of their teams, not till what, 6 months ago, you were captain of England?
About 3 months ago.
Till 3 months ago, and Rahul Dravid, it's just been a year or so, we seem to have forgotten, but you were captain as well, a year or so ago.
A year ago. It's been a long time though.
It seems like a long time in Indian cricket. I think what we'll do is we'll try and talk to the audience at some point about, obviously they'll have questions for both Michael as well as Rahul, but we'll try and dwell on some of the issues that affect the world game at the moment. And let me actually start with Rahul, because India's often now starting to get called the hub of world cricket, where everything of the game, where the source of the game is financially as well as emotionally in many ways. But Rahul, starting in the 90s and now in the last couple of years, the things that you've seen, have you been taken aback by how much the game has changed, and do you think it's changed fundamentally forever with this 2020 revolution?
Yes, I have. I think the sort of change that I've seen in the game over the last year and a half, I think the choices in the game have changed over the last year and a half. The game itself, I don't think it's changed a lot. I think it's still a bat and ball game. It's, I don't think there's been too much change in the way the game has actually been played. But just I think with the advent of 2020 cricket, with the IPL, with different leagues, with more opportunities for young players. More decisions to make, I think, for a lot of players, for a lot of boards, for a lot of people connected with the game. It's all happened very quickly over the last year and a half. It's a very exciting time. I think it's a really exciting time, and you can see that the game is changing. The way the game is perceived by the public, I think, has probably changed a lot over the last year and a half, and that's changing very rapidly and very quickly. So it's an exciting time. But also a time I think that we need to be aware of and ensure that we're on top of it.
Okay, the reason why we ask this to you from a player's point of view is you don't get that sitting on the outside. Is that when you started the game, there were a lot of legends of Indian cricket who were leaving the game or stepping out of the game. Now you see this younger crop of cricketers coming in. Do you sense that the value or the respect they have for test match cricket or one-day cricket, or that India cap has, or an international cap, seems to have fallen a little bit, and it's more commerce-driven, it's more driven by how successful they can be at 2020 cricket, how they can get their act together in that format? Is the respect, what I mean to ask you is the respect for test match cricket lower among the players themselves, younger players?
Not as yet. I don't feel that as yet. I mean, I think what we're seeing with the sort of the growth of the 2020 game, it's really it's just been a year and a half since that's happened. So if you ask me whether a young Indian cricketer in the team today at 2021, who's sort of playing in the one-day team at the moment or the 2020 team at the moment, whether he doesn't aspire to play Test cricket, my answer to that would be no, because he's grown up. His sort of formative years or his impressionable years. He's grown up still watching Test cricket and watching Test series in India playing England or India playing Australia and watching some of the greats of the game. What I'd be interested to see is is what happens to, say, a kid in 4 or 5 years' time. That's going to be really interesting to see, because
When his hero is not Rahul Dravid, but maybe a player who's just coming through the ranks and done well at 2020 level.
yeah, when he looks at, say, the IPL, and he looks at the success of the IPL, and he looks at the opportunities that can provide him, what are his choices going to be at 15 and 16? What are his aspirations going to be when he becomes 20? That's going to be really interesting, and that's something that is going to be interesting to see in the future. And
Let me ask Michael. One of the things that will happen as a result of this 2020 revolution is, do you think that the way the game is coached at the junior level, at the formative stage, as Rahul mentioned there, why would a kid listen to a coach that says, bat like Rahul Dravid, bat like Michael Vaughan? He would want to maybe learn how to play the paddle shot before he plays the cover drive.
Are you trying to say that me and Rahul can't play 2020 cricket?
Well, I'm not trying to say that, but I'm trying to tell you that there might be a culture of 2020 cricket which might overtake the game. And do you fear that at the coaching level you might forget the art of maybe building an innings, things of that kind?
I haven't seen it as yet in terms of the coaching, but I will tell you that I play for a county back home called Yorkshire, and last year was my first chance to play 2020 cricket for Yorkshire in our competition, and it was very evident from being around the younger players of 18 to 21 that they were very, very committed to 2020 cricket.
More than they would be to the longer format?
Yeah, they were still very keen on playing the longer format, and they still developed their skills to try and be part of the longer format. But I think if you ask them honestly, what skills would you rather be? Would you rather be a 7-hour batsman or someone that can clear the ropes and get a quick 30 or 40 in 30 minutes? It sounded evident to me that they were going to go down that road. So, as Rahul said earlier,
that worries you?
It does worry me, because I think it's a real important time for the administrators and the leaders of the game to ensure that Test cricket is saved. I think 2020 is a fantastic concept, and one that comes across on television as a very entertaining and exciting game. But we all agree that Test match cricket is the pinnacle and probably the hardest form of the game. But mixed in with both, there's certainly enough scope, obviously, in a year to have a great 2020 tournament, but also really still capture Test match cricket. And it was great to see the India versus Australia series be so competitive. Obviously, with two great teams fighting hard against each other, and obviously India beating Australia, that was also quite nice.
Can I ask you a yes or no question, both of you? Do you fear for the health of Test cricket?
I just think it might need to change. You know, it's the game that we all love, but it's stayed the same over many, many years, which can be a good thing. But I think it might need to be tweaked a little bit. In England, I'd like to see, like we're having one-day cricket, 2020 cricket, round-robin tournaments. I'd love to see India and Pakistan maybe come to England at the same time. And we'd play a round-robin. India would play Pakistan one week, we'd play Pakistan the next, we'd play India the week after. So it becomes more of a round-robin kind of tournament, so it doesn't just come and be a little bit sterile in terms of 5 Test matches. I'd like to see a little bit more where other teams travel the world, and certainly India, Test match cricket gets a lot of support, and I know that kind of concept would work very well.
Rahul, worry about Test cricket? Maybe 10 years down the line, would it mean the same?
I don't think there's a yes or no answer to that. It's it's dependent on the decisions that we take, how we cope with the new scheduling, how we cope with the growing demand for the 2020 game, and how we manage it. So I think the decisions that we take now will be the results of that will be evident in 5 or 6 years' time.
Okay, let's talk about the other thing that's happened in cricket. Michael, you've experienced this in England with the scrutiny that comes in from the media now. Obviously, in England, they have more to look at other than cricket. But have you felt that scrutiny's just grown to a point where it's starting to affect players mentally? Did it affect you, for instance, at all when you made your decision to quit as captain?
Yeah, absolutely. My last 6 months as England captain became very, very difficult. That's one of the reasons that that it's time to move on and give someone else the opportunity. And that's I had 5.5 fantastic years as being the England captain. I still to this day say it's the best job in English sport. But you do have a little bit of a shelf life. The media do play a big part. I think it's part and parcel of a sportsman that you have to learn how to deal with it. I dealt with it very well for 5 years, but the last 6 months it just became too much. And there was also another. I felt the team just needed a new direction. They'd worked under me for 5 years, and I started to feel that some of the players were becoming very comfortable. So Kevin Peterson will be totally different to my style of leadership, and I think that's very important sometimes, that you have a change. Change can be good, certainly in terms of different approaches. And I gave an approach of my style for 5.5 years, and Kevin Peterson will be totally different. I believe that's exactly what the team needed. So it was the hardest job to make in terms of what I was giving away, but also the easiest job to make, because mentally I knew that it was the right time to move on.
In India, Rahul, there's a lot of scrutiny on cricketers. Of course there is. There's also a lot of interest in the game. It's the #1 game as far as both television and print and newspapers are concerned. And it obsesses us as a nation. And as players, you must have felt that a lot. Do you worry sometimes about this level of jingoism, the level of kind of national fervor that cricket generates, or do you sometimes want, as cricketers, for it just to remain a sport? Can it do that? Does it get into the players' minds?
I think it comes the two sides to the coin. I think we must recognize that, I think the advantages of cricket being the #1 sport in the country, the fact that it's followed, the passion that it has in this country is really important, not only to Indian cricket, but I think to the world game. And I don't think we can do away with that. I think India has grown, the media has grown tenfold since I started in '96. I don't think that's going to change. And I think, there are...
Is that a good thing or a bad thing, having grown 10 years?
It's got its plus and minuses, and I think you've got to just accept it and learn to deal with it. I think that's possibly the only way that I can think about it. I think there are great advantages with having an aggressive media or having so much of interest in the game. I think, when you look at some of the other sports in the country and they don't get the kind of column inches, or they don't get the kind of hero worship that cricketers get, I think, you begin to then appreciate what cricket gets. Yes, you can look at the flip side of it and say that, there is a lot of intense pressure, a lot of scrutiny, sometimes over the top, sometimes not necessarily just because of the cricket, sometimes necessarily because just the marketplace, just because the media is competing with each other, that sometimes, you just being the #1 sport, probably deals with it. But I think the flip side, the plus side of it is probably much larger. My only concern is, and I think that, what's really important is that how we teach some of our younger players to deal with these things, and how we teach and educate some of our younger players to cope with this particular situation that they find themselves in. Are we giving them enough guidance and help that they can deal with these situations that are going to exist and probably going to get bigger and bigger as time goes on?
You spoke about the role of the media. Personally, have you experienced that as something that's added pressure onto you? Have you been able to completely keep the scrutiny in the media away from it? Has it affected any of your decisions that you might have made in cricket, as captain, not as captain, as batsman? Anything that goes into your mind because of what you're reading in the paper or because of what you're seeing on television? Does that come into the equation for Rahul Dravid in particular? I
think it's impossible to live in a society and live and have all this around you and not have it affect you at all. I mean, it's just impossible to cocoon yourself. I mean, you try as best as you can as an Indian cricketer to cocoon yourself from it. But I'm sure when you look back in hindsight and you look at some of the things that you might have made, decisions that you might have made at various stages of various things, you do recognize that as maybe things that might have been brought on by certain pressures or certain decisions that you feel you were rushed. It might have happened at various stages. But at that point of time, you probably don't look at it that way. And you have you can look back on it on hindsight. You have a better perception of things. But no, I don't think you can completely cocoon yourself away from it. You just, like I said, you just got to have strategies to learn how to deal with it. Sometimes you deal with it better than you can. I mean, there's a lot in cricket. I mean, your own performances. When I always felt that when you're performing well yourself, you just deal with things a lot better than you do.
Someone said once that you read the newspapers and watch television channels when you're doing well. When you're not doing well, then you just switch off. Do you follow that method as well?
I just try and not do it either when I'm doing well or not doing well. I mean, that's just a simple policy that I've tried to follow over the last 4 or 5 years, and yes, it definitely gives you a lot more peace of mind, no doubt.
Let me ask you, Michael, also the other thing that's going to happen now in cricket is with the growing sort of commercial interest in cricket, with younger players coming through, there will be a lot more people invested in cricket. There'll be people who'll be looking to make a buck, people who get in, sign up young players, show them or sell them dreams and stories of how successful they can be commercially and how viable they can be commercially. Is that something that you fear in England, especially with some of the younger players coming through? And do you sense that that's something that cricket administrators need to look at, how to control the influence of perhaps not such positive elements into the game, perhaps agents who are not quite above board, things of that kind?
Yeah, again, I think these are all the testing times of cricket, but they're also real great times in cricket. So there's so much more interest in the game. So yeah, they are bad. There's, like any forms of life, there's really good agents out there who do a wonderful job for the players. There's also some agents out there who necessarily might not do a wonderful job for the players. So as Rahul said earlier, I think it's all about ex-players, and we have a really good professional cricket association back home who try and educate younger players to make the right decisions, and also get good people around them who, if they are struggling to make the right decisions, the good people will make the right decisions for them. I think in any form of life, I think the foundations that you're given from your parents play as big a part as any. I think the role of your families in dealing with all these kind of difficult decisions that young players have to make play a big part. But I think agents will become probably more widespread in the game because of all the changes. I really do think ex-players and the government bodies and the cricket association around the world have a real job to do to make sure that we're educating the players to go down the right avenues and to go and deal with the right kind of agents rather than the ones that maybe are just here to make the quick buck.
Rahul, what do you reckon? There's a lot of guys out there now. There's a lot of younger players coming through, and it's life-changing cricket now very quickly, isn't it? In 6 months, it can change your life forever. You could, and someone coming from small towns, especially in India, where there's a lot of young kids now coming through from small towns. There's got to be more care taken. They've got to be nurtured better, isn't it? And also, do you see a role for senior players such as yourself in this process?
Yeah, I agree with Michael. I think there's going to be a role definitely for senior players and administrators, in a time like this. Just on the, I think, we look at young kids today, and I think, with the IPL and so many opportunities, you're right when you say that it does attract a lot of people to the game. People who want to be part of this game, people who want to be associated with the players in the game. And I think that's an area that, we've got to be really careful of in India. I know
sorry Rahul, and do you get the feeling that there's unscrupulous elements in the game much more than they were in 7 or 8 years ago? Do you get that sense?
I think so. I definitely think that that's going to happen if it's not regulated. I think agents are really good in the sense that if you have the right agent and you have it at the right age and you have someone who can look after your interests outside of the game, it gives you sort of peace of mind to play the game and just focus on your cricket. But if you have agents who are picking up boys at the age of 14 and 15 when they're not really mature enough to make the right decisions, then you've got to question that. You've got to ask some questions. I can understand a player who's established himself, who's a bit mature, who's played maybe in the Indian team for a year or so. He can make the right choices. But I think a lot of the agents who are picking up boys at 14, 15, and I've heard stories now in over the last year and a half about what's happening in India, and I think that's something that needs to be monitored and carefully looked into, especially by the board and the authorities at local state associations. I know for a fact that in England, the football, I think if you have to be a football agent, you have to be certified by the Football Association. I think that's the rule. Yeah. And I think some sort of regulation or some sort of thing like that, because I think, you are dealing with young boys and boys here and girls in the future, who are at a really impressionable age and who sometimes who come from backgrounds where maybe their families can't also necessarily don't have the necessary ability to make the right decisions, and if they get into sort of unscrupulous hands at a young age, it's something that we need to be aware of and careful about.
And let me get you gentlemen on this other issue that we get to talk about a lot. We hear this phrase spirit of cricket a lot these days. We've often spoken about it and we wonder what it is, and the MCC defines it in a certain way. Does that phrase mean a lot to you as a former captain of England as well? And do you sense that its meaning has changed over the last few years?
I'm not too sure that it's changed. I guess the spirit of the game, with all the money that's come into the game, could be tested because I guess there's more rewards within the game now. So individual players, individual battles will become more rewarding for the ones that win. I think that's the real test for the game, and the senior players in the team to try and be the educators to the younger players in the team to really drill home the fact that playing in the spirit. I believe in playing in cricket in a very, very hard fashion, and I love the fact that a fast bowler can go at a batsman. I don't mind the odd chirp. If you call it sledging, I don't mind that. I think that's all part and parcel of the game, as long as it doesn't step beyond the line. Things like walking or not walking, again, I think that's just part of the game. I'm not too sure whether that's the spirit of the game. I just think it's part of the game. Some people like to walk, some people stand and give the umpire the chance to make the decision. I don't have a problem with that. It's confrontations and throwing the ball at batsmen and overdoing the mark that we have to try and cut out. But I think the game, from what I see again from the visions and the television, it's coming across very, very well. There's competition, there's battle.
Language. So in this kind of a situation, don't you think some of our cultural elements should get incorporated either into the rules or into the interpretation of the rules when problems are
Thank you.
happen?
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, but I mean, if you live in India, you deal with this all the time. I mean, the way a Punjabi guy, the language he would use compared to a South Indian from Bangalore, be a lot different, So, I mean, it's we have that all the time in our dressing room. So it's, yeah, the interpretation of the rules, I'm sure. I mean, see, firstly, there's no rules. There are no rules regarding things like this confrontation, or I mean, they're evolving as we go along. And sure, I'm sure that I'm sure the interpretation of these things will change with time. More incidents that do happen, and people start recognizing and understanding each other. I think it comes down to that. I think it comes down to respecting, and I think that's where there's a huge responsibility on captains, on administrators, on players to educate, to have a more educated player, to have a more understanding player, to have a more respectful player about each other's cultures and race. And I think things like the IPL, where there's going to be a lot more interaction between players of different countries, and I've already seen that in the first year. I think you get a much better awareness of other people, and I think that's going to go a long way in I think taking away some of this ill feeling and some of this misunderstandings that do exist. Because I think in nature, I don't think that you come across people who are like you said, it's just a way people can react to certain situations. Yeah.
Mr. Pandey, I believe. Yeah. Go ahead.
I am Piyush. When you guys do very well, you get all the calls from media. When you guys do very badly, I get all the calls from media. And they asked me one question, so I thought this is a good opportunity for you to answer it so they don't call me up. When you do badly, they say, you think it's because they're doing too many endorsements? I defend you all the time. You can defend yourself now.
Go ahead, Rahul. Defend yourself.
I think, firstly, people have got to realize, and I think sportsmen and cricketers in India know that better than anyone else. I think if you want to do endorsements and you want to enjoy the benefits that the game provides, you've got to do well in your sport. I think that's the bottom line. As soon as you stop doing well in your sport, and as soon as you stop scoring the runs or taking the wickets, all the endorsements and everything stops immediately. Players are more aware of that than anyone else. Whether endorsements have a direct influence on the cricket, I don't think so. I mean, while you might see an ad shown on television every single day, you might see Mahendra Singh Dhoni on TV every single day, and you're watching him at every drinks break or every break between a single over. It doesn't mean that he's actually spending that time doing the ad at that point of time. It might have taken him all of 3 hours or 4 hours to do that ad, which is shown throughout the year. So I mean, players are aware of that. Players are aware that the commercial side and the benefits of the game are only there for the people who do well, and you can see that. You can see that on television. You can see that with people, in the advertising that happens. And players know that if they slip up in the game, they're the ones who are going to suffer from it.
Okay, we've got to wrap this up very quickly. We've only got time for a couple more questions. Yes, sir. Go ahead first.
Thank you. A question for both Rahul and Vaughan. You have already told does 2020 affect the one-day cricket? Because let me give you a background. Before one-day cricket, if you score 200 runs in a test cricket, it was too much. But after one day, even 300 a day is nothing.
Okay.
So what I mean to say, doesn't going to affect, doesn't going to tarnish the image. It's going to improve your 2020 and 5-day cricket. That is how I want to say.
Michael, how do you think 2020 cricket affects playing of the game?
Yeah, I think it's going to improve the 50-50 one-day cricket in test match.
I think it's brought a new kind of feel to the game. I think there's, you'll see now, I mean, the one-day game over the last 10 years has brought a new shot. The reverse sweep, the reversed hit. Kevin Peterson has the switch hit now. I think fielding and fitness has become very, very important in the game, which should have an add-on effect to Test match cricket as well. What I will say about the IPL as well over in this country, I think India are very lucky to have it. I know they've done a hell of a lot to create it, and it looks a fantastic concept, but I think Indian Test team, one-day team and 2020 team will progress very, very quickly, because all your young players are going to have the great advantage of being in the dressing rooms with the likes of Shane Warne, Ricky Ponting, and all the great players around the world. So not only are you going to have the chance to pick the brains of your own great players, and you have many, they're going to have the chance to pick the brains of all the great players around the world. So I think you're going to see Indian cricket at the forefront for a long time. Hopefully not in the next 4.5 weeks, though.
Okay, we've got time for one final question. Yes, sir, that's it. One final question. Go ahead.
Rahul, my name is S.C. Khanna. Since now we have a lot of commercialization taking place in the cricket, and as you see in US, there are thousands of golf academies. What do you think of starting a golf academy with a player like you, who has been called a wall of the cricket as coming one down? So what do you think about that?
Golf academy.
You play golf? You play golf?
No, not enough. No.
I am asking you for cricket academy, not for golf.
Cricket academy.
Yeah, I think there are already a lot of academies. There are a lot of academies around the country which are run by former players. I think the Critical Academy, to me personally, is the National Cricket Academy at Bangalore, and the state academies that are run by the different state associations. I think that's going to be a really important part of our cricket, and especially in the area that I spoke of earlier on, in educating and in developing our young players. Not only from the cricketing side of things. I think cricket academies have to change their focus now from not only developing cricketing skills in players, but also providing them and equipping them with the tools that they need to survive in this day and age of commercialism, of media scrutiny, of a lot of money maybe at a young age. And I think, apart from having cricket coaches at academies, I think you're going to need some wise heads there, educators, maybe former players, to guide and advise these young players at a young age on the way that the challenges that they're going to face in their careers.
Okay, I'm going to be a bit of a rebel. I know we've got to wrap up, but because we don't get Rahul and Michael together like this very often, we'll take two more questions from the audience. The lady there, just behind the gentleman. Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead. Two more questions.
This question is for Rahul. In the recent years, we've seen a lot of young cricketers coming from small towns rather than big cities, even though we know there are several academies in big cities and we have many legends training them. Why is this? Why are we not having young players coming from big cities also?
I think a couple of reasons. I think firstly that today in small towns, the facilities have reached. I think, the Board of Control of Cricket in India has done a great job of ensuring that facilities have reached smaller towns. I mean, in the past, all the facilities were concentrated in the big cities. But today, we were in Nagpur the other day, and I think the stadium in Nagpur is as good as anything in the world that you will see. So the facilities have reached smaller towns, and that meant that kids from smaller towns now have the opportunities to play. Coaching is not so much of a factor anymore because you have television. I think television does a great job of duplicating a coach. I mean, you can watch the best players in action. You can hear the greatest players speak about the game through television today. And young kids follow that. And if they have the facilities, I think there's no limit to where India can grow. The next generation of Indian cricketer is going to come from the smaller towns and cities. To answer why the big cities don't produce maybe that many cricketers anymore, I think probably a combination of factors, distances, commuting. Just for parents, just looking at the amount of time that, in the end of the day, I think, for young kids to grow as cricketers, their parents need to be able to invest a lot of time and energy into the young boys. And parents in maybe big cities today have so much of work pressure, so much of commuting, time it takes to commute from one ground, from one place to another. They probably don't have that, they don't have the ability to do that anymore. I mean, just for example, if, what took me, say, 30 minutes to reach a stadium when I was, a young boy growing up playing for Karnataka, takes me an hour and 15 minutes today to reach the stadium the same distance, So, I mean, there's just more pressure, I think, on children in cities as well. School pressure, education. I think, there's just so much pressure to do well in studies that maybe it's becoming more and more difficult.
Okay, we've completely run out of time, unfortunately. Can't take any more questions. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, Rahul. You had final words for someone in the audience.
I'd just like to congratulate Abhinav Bindra on his fantastic achievement. Just watching that, for me was truly phenomenal. And what was more phenomenal than anything was in just today's day and age of so much of hype and jingoism and a show. His reaction to when he won that gold medal and the interviews that he's given after that, I think it's been truly phenomenal. I mean, somebody asked him, why aren't you more excited? Why didn't you get jumped? And I think his answer was so relevant to, I think, what a sportsman knows and feels. He said, yeah, I mean, what's there to be excited about? The real excitement was when I shot that and what I did. That was what it was all about, and truly phenomenal. Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you very much. Gaurav, may I request Kadambari Murli, National Sports Editor, Hindustan Times, to please present mementos to both Michael Vaughan and Rahul Dravid. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Lunch awaits you in Shah Jahan. We will begin our next session on time, so please be back here on time. May I also just share with you that we've got a little lucky draw happening in Shah Jahan, and Rahul Dravid has agreed to pull out the lucky winner. This is a lucky draw for Laksa Parker, the kiosk in Shah Jahan, which is going to give out some prizes to the lucky winners. So, lunch in Shah Jahan. We return for the next session that begins at 2 o'clock. No.